Ohio, the one state that we all wish that we could forget. They had some interesting things going on today when it came to the realm of politics, because there is something that was up for vote called Issue 1. Issue 1, Ohio ended up voting against this, but this was just kind of a very strange proposal. I guess you could read all this if you want to. Here's an article from CBS News, but this picture kind of breaks down what the proposals were in this policy. So what it does is it changes three main things. First of all, if you want to change something that's in the Constitution, instead of needing 50% plus one vote in order to pass, it would need 60% of the vote in order to pass. The second line item says that citizen-led ballot initiatives to, kick off changes to the state constitution, they would no longer require signatures from half of the counties. They would require signatures from all of the counties in order to move forward. And then thirdly, it gets rid of the cure period. So cure period says if signatures are determined to be invalid, petitioners have 10 days to file corrected signatures or collect additional signatures. And, the new way of doing things would be to have no cure period at all. Now, to me, these changes don't really seem that great. Because it makes it not necessarily impossible, but definitely more difficult to make changes to the state constitution. And, for a nation that at least pretends to be democratic, it just kind of seems anti-American to be like, yeah, let's make it, harder for citizens to use their votes to affect change in the state, right? It just seems like a very anti-democratic move. But Fox News has an article about this, and I'm wondering, what are the arguments for this change? All I've heard is that this just prevents left-wingers from taking over. But it's just keep folks happy. Republicans do a good enough job in your states so that your state is red and people aren't trying to put ridiculous policies into place. Just be good Republicans to demonstrate how good you are as politicians, and then you don't need to absolutely lock up the state of the Constitution. But anyways, I figured if anyone would be running to the defense of this policy, it would be Fox News. Because I'm really trying to understand, what about this is good other than, keeping things from going too woke in the state of Ohio. So let's take a look at what Fox News has to say here. Ohio sees massive voter turnout on GOP ballot question to protect state constitution from liberal activists. Polling shows voters are evenly split on state issue 1, which is weird to me because I am struggling to see the long-term pros of this other than limited wokeness in the Constitution. Ohio voters on Tuesday will decide on a ballot measure to make it harder to amend the state constitution, a change conservatives say is needed to protect the state from a radical anti-gun abortion and education agenda that could soon find its way to other states. This just sounds so bad. This sounds so bad because it's oh no, our voters are woke. We must stop democracy before it goes too far. Look, you guys know me, right? I hate wokeness. But I don't think that we should sacrifice democracy in order to get rid of wokeness. Right? Look, if the people want their state or their city to just go down into some woke hellscape, that should be up to the voters. The voters should be allowed to determine what type of state or what type of city, whatever, they want to live in. That's the whole point of democracy in the first place. So the idea that we need to, call democracy in order to prevent woke changes in the legislature is kind of ridiculous. And it's actually almost like a slap in the face of the voters because it's we don't trust you guys to make good decisions. Don't change anything at all. What? And then you're gonna ask voters to go vote away some of their voting power? That just makes no sense to me. But let's read on. Let's read on and see if there's a greater defense other than this is gonna keep us from going too woke. It's an issue that has already prompted a massive early vote turnout, one that has some election offices straining to manage the load. This is gubernatorial level turnout, says Regine Johnson, deputy director of the Board of Elections in Stark County. Well, that is good. It is good that we're having people show up in full force to vote on these things. I think people actually need to pay more attention to their local elections because things like this do have huge impacts down the road. So that is a good thing. As of Wednesday, more than 533,000 people had voted by mail or in person since early voting began July 11. According to data collected by the Associated Press, that's nearly double the early voting figures for Ohio's 2 previous midterm primary elections. So hold on, let's see if there's any actual argumentation in support of this that is more than just we're gonna keep the state from being too woke. At its course about keeping out-of-state special interest groups from buying their way into our Constitution, which we're seeing happen far too often, says Amy Netos. They're circumventing the legislative process and going directly after the Constitution. Hold on. Can you use money to buy votes? That sounds kind of illegal. People just have to go to the polls. I'm so confused. How does pouring money into a state force people to vote a different way? Unless you're, I don't know, building up factories and things. And in that case, that's just normal politics. Democrat opponents have made the argument that the ballot measure will take away power from voters and give it to the politicians. That's true. That's true. That's just literally what it does. I don't understand. Why is this partisan? Okay, here's another defense. Here's Mehek Cook running defense on this thing. The ACLU is putting out, quote, a deceitful message. Quote, they're lying to Ohio voters when they say that we are taking their vote away, end quote, said Cook, who said the goal is to prevent outside groups from influencing the state. Quote, we're actually empowering Ohio. How? How are you empowering Ohioans? You are reducing the power of the vote. If you sign a law that says, hey, instead of needing 50% of the vote to make a change on this type of legislation, you need 60%. How does that not take away power from the voters? The Constitution is truly for the structure of government and then fundamental rights, not policies. I believe that's the place for the legislator. So I strongly feel as a mom, but also a business owner and an attorney, that we need to protect a strict analysis of our Constitution, not allow these outside groups to dictate what works in Ohio. You're not demonstrating how outside groups are affecting the Constitution. These people are running around out here oh, these special interest groups are changing the Constitution, but they're not demonstrating the connection between the two. Now, you guys might be right? The GOP might be right in this assertion, but they're certainly not taking any great pains to demonstrate how they're right. Okay, this is actually a good point somewhat. Natose also said that some of the biggest opponents of State Issue 1, including the ACLU and the Ohio Democratic Party, have internal rules in their organizations that require a 60% threshold for actions such as removing board members, endorsing candidates, and amending their own constitution. Cook said that the change would put Ohio more in line with other states that have higher thresholds for changing the Constitution. While this is true, this is true, and that makes sense, but it doesn't make it true that this doesn't weaken the vote of citizens. Most certainly would. I mean, it's a little embarrassing for the ACLU, I gotta be honest, if their whole shtick was, this is anti-democratic, when they're moving to a ratio that they themselves have for themselves. But I just think that they chose the wrong reasoning for this policy. They should have just said that we want to have the same rules as other states, and that would be a lot stronger case to defend than being oh no, we're actually empowering Ohioans. No, you're not. But all in all, I am a reluctant Republican. I'm certainly conservative, but I don't feel like the Republican Party is too conservative anymore. I generally tend to like things that the Republican Party does more than the Democratic Party, but here is an exception. This issue just seemed absolutely ridiculous, and I don't... Maybe they just presented it wrongly, or they didn't know how to do good optics for this, but I would just say, rare Democratic Party W right here.